When you watch a classic Hollywood action movie, the climax of the story is almost always the big rescue,
Oh, absolutely.
right? Like the hero sweeps in, pulls someone out of a burning building or, a sinking ship. The dramatic music swells, the survivors hug, and the screen just fades to black.
Yeah, the immediate danger is neutralized, so our brains just naturally register that the conflict is over.
Exactly. We assume the happily ever after it just naturally follows. But what if the screen didn't fade to black?
Right.
What if the movie kept going and you actually had to watch the hero and the rescued person walk away from the wreckage and figure out how to live together day in and day out
Yeah.
in a completely new reality?
That's actually the perfect way to frame what we're unpacking today.
I think so too, because today we are taking a deep dive into the book of Exodus. And our mission for you, the listener, is to move way beyond that Hollywood highlight reel. We want to look past the plagues and, Charlton Heston and the CGI parting of the Red Sea.
Yeah, to uncover the profound spiritual destination of this ancient text,
Right.
which requires a pretty massive shift in perspective, to be honest, primarily because of a core misconception about the ultimate goal of the narrative.
Right. The goal wasn't just leaving.
Exactly. The defining scripture for this entire journey, the hook that really anchors everything we're about to discuss, is Exodus 20, verse 2.
Okay.
It reads, I am the Lord your God who brought you out of the land of Egypt, out of the house of slavery.
Let's unpack the mechanics of that.
Yeah.
Because when most of us hear the word Exodus, our brains immediately go to, like, Moses holding a staff, darkness falling over Egypt, the Israelites walking through those huge walls of water.
An ultimate escape story.
Yeah, exactly. But looking through the extensive sources we've gathered, treating this purely as an escape story, it kind of misses the point entirely, doesn't it?
It really does. We get so focused on the mechanics of the rescue that we miss the relationship.
Yeah.
The escape is just the prologue. I mean, the Red Sea was never the final destination.
Wait, really? Because in pop culture, that's the grand finale.
Right, but if we look at the overarching progression of these events, the true storyline moves from physical redemption to the establishment of a covenant, and it ultimately culminates in divine presence.
Divine presence.
Yeah. God didn't pour out his power to rescue the Israelites out of Egypt just so they could wander off into the desert and, build their own autonomous society.
Right.
He brought them out of slavery specifically to bring them to himself.
That distinction right there changes the entire theology of the text. He didn't just save them from something. He saved them for something.
Exactly.
But, before we can appreciate the destination, we really need to examine the psychological and physical depths of where they actually started.
Yeah, we have to look at the context. Based on the traditional historical view outlined in our sources, this narrative, which was recorded around the 15th century BC, it begins with just a staggering contrast.
It's a huge shift.
Oh, massive. If you look at the end of the previous book, Genesis, the Israelites were thriving.
Right, because of Joseph.
Exactly. Joseph, an Israelite, had risen to become the second most powerful man in the entire Egyptian empire. His family was protected. They were basically favored guests in a foreign land.
But then you turn the page to the opening of Exodus, and man, that favored status has just entirely evaporated.
Gone completely.
They are oppressed, slave laborers being systematically crushed. It is a brutal historical whiplash.
It really is.
And the text gives this chillingly brief explanation. It just says, a new pharaoh arose who did not know Joseph.
The political winds simply shifted.
Yeah, the Egyptian empire started looking at the booming Israelite population not as guests anymore, but as like a severe national security threat.
Right, so they weaponized their economy and their military to break the Israelites' spirits through just unbearable physical labor.
Unbearable.
The paranoia of the Egyptian regime led to state-sponsored brutality. And they were subjected to 400 years of this environment.
400 years.
Imagine the psychological toll of being born into a system that constantly reinforces your complete worthlessness. I mean, you're not a human being to them. You are literally just a machine for making bricks.
That sudden descent from favored citizens to brutalized slaves, it just makes me think about the fragility of human security.
Absolutely.
You can be on top of the world, feeling completely secure in your career, your relationships, your health, and then a new pharaoh arises.
A sudden layoff.
Yeah, a sudden layoff, a terrifying medical diagnosis, a global economic crisis, and overnight you just feel trapped and powerless.
It's terrifying.
Which brings up a really crucial reflection for you listening today. When human circumstances change so drastically, and the dynasties of our own lives fall apart, do we still trust that God remembers his promises?
That's the core question, isn't it? And that specific word, remembers, is actually the pivot point of the entire narrative here.
How so?
Well, the people are suffering terribly under this bitter slavery. They cry out in agony. And the text notes that God sees, he hears, and he remembers his covenant.
But, in our modern vernacular, remembering kind of implies that someone had forgotten in the first place.
Right, like we picture God suddenly slapping his forehead because he left the Israelites in Egypt too long.
Yeah, exactly. Like, oh no, I left the oven on.
But in the biblical context, God remembering is a theological term indicating that he is preparing to take decisive, covenant-keeping action.
Ah.
He steps into human history and declares to Moses, I will redeem you.
And the mechanism of that redemption is so fascinating to me because it involves absolutely zero human effort.
None at all.
Like, this was not a successful slave revolt.
No.
The Israelites didn't secretly hoard weapons or organize a militia and storm the palace to overthrow the government. They were completely helpless, traumatized brickmakers.
And that utter lack of human agency in the rescue is very deliberate. God takes the exclusive initiative. He steps in with overwhelming power through the 10 plagues.
Right.
And our sources point out a critical layer of detail here that most casual readers completely miss. These plagues were not just random ecological disasters meant to annoy Pharaoh into submission. They were a systematic, targeted dismantling of the Egyptian pantheon.
Wait, theological warfare. Let's linger on that for a second because that insight completely changes how you read the story.
It really does.
It wasn't just magic tricks.
Not at all. Consider the very first plague, turning the Nile River to blood. The Egyptians worshipped a god named Hapi, who was the spirit of the Nile, the source of Egypt's life and agricultural wealth.
Wow.
By turning it to blood, God is demonstrating absolute supremacy over their source of life.
That's wild.
Or take the plague of darkness. The chief deity of the Egyptian pantheon was Ra, the sun god. Pharaoh himself was considered the living incarnation of Ra.
Right.
So for 3 days, a darkness so thick it could literally be felt covers the land, and Ra is utterly powerless to pierce it.
So it's essentially God saying, I'm bigger than all of this. He isn't just breaking Pharaoh's economy. He is systematically humiliating the entire spiritual worldview that kept the Israelites enslaved.
Yeah.
He's proving that every power they feared is entirely subordinate to him.
And that dismantling of power leads directly to the emotional and spiritual core of the rescue, which is the Passover.
Passover.
Yes. God instructs each Israelite household to sacrifice a lamb and paint its blood on the wooden doorposts of their homes.
Right.
That blood becomes a tangible sign. So when the final devastating plague of judgment sweeps through the Egyptian empire, it passes over the homes marked by the blood of the lamb.
Man, the psychological weight of that night must have been just staggering.
Unimaginable.
You're sitting in your home, hearing the sounds of devastation sweeping through the most powerful empire on earth, knowing that the only thing standing between your family and judgment is the blood of a substitute on your doorpost.
Yes.
It's an intense, visceral image of substitutionary atonement. A life given for a life.
And the lamb brings the redemption that allows them to finally march out of Egypt. And this exodus culminates in that famous scene at the Red Sea.
Right, the big movie moment.
Exactly. They march out, but Pharaoh changes his mind and pursues them with the ancient world's most advanced military force.
And the Israelites are pinned.
Completely pinned against an impassable body of water.
And God simply makes a way where there is no way. He splits the sea. The Israelites walk from slavery to freedom on dry ground, and the waters crash down on the pursuing army.
He completely eliminates the threat of their oppressors. It is the ultimate, undeniable display of redemptive power.
It is, but here is where the story gets deeply fascinating to me.
Okay.
Once you cross an ocean and escape your abuser, you don't instantly know how to live.
Oh, that's a great point.
If we go back to our Hollywood movie analogy, the Red Sea is where the credits usually roll.
Right.
But in a 40-chapter book, this happens in chapter 14.
Yeah, there's a lot of book left.
Right. If you drop a massive population of formerly brutalized, traumatized slaves into a barren desert, you don't get an instant utopian society. You get chaos.
Absolute chaos.
They had only ever known the dictatorial whip of a slave driver. They had no internal framework for living as free people.
And the absence of slavery does not automatically equal the presence of freedom.
Wow, that's good.
Freedom requires a framework, Otherwise, it just devolves into anarchy. And this logistical and spiritual necessity drives the narrative directly to Mount Sinai.
Right. Amounts.
This is where God establishes a formal covenant with them, most famously delivering the Ten Commandments. But there is a crucial sequence of events here that defines the entire theology of the Old Testament.
What's that?
Redemption comes before the law.
Love to put a pin in that because that is huge. It completely inverts how so many people view religion today.
It really does.
Because the modern cultural assumption of religion is essentially a transaction. You know, clean up your act, follow a strict moral code, prove your worth, and then God will accept you and save you.
Yeah, work your way up to God. But Exodus presents the exact opposite paradigm.
How so?
God saves them while they are still in Egypt. While they are still messy, faithless, and helpless, he parts the Red Sea for them without making them pass a morality test.
I love that.
Grace precedes obedience. God did not stand on the shores of the Red Sea, hand Moses a list of rules, and say, all right, if your people can follow these laws perfectly for 30 days, then I'll part the water.
That's such a good visual. So the law is not a condition for their salvation.
No.
It is the constitution for a people who have already been saved.
Exactly. They receive the law because they have now become, as the text states, a people belonging to God.
Right.
The laws were given to teach a brutalized people how to function as a holy community.
You know, that makes me think about how modern culture views the very concept of commandments. We instinctively bristle at the word law.
Oh, for sure. Nobody likes being told what to do.
Exactly. We tend to see rules as restrictive, as a form of bondage that stops us from living our truth or, doing whatever we want.
Right.
But in the context of people who just escaped actual physical bondage, receiving the law was the ultimate protection. I like to think of it like guardrails on a really treacherous mountain road.
Okay, I like that.
If you're driving on the edge of a cliff, those heavy metal guardrails aren't restricting your freedom to drive. They are protecting you from plunging to your death.
That's exactly it.
The law was God's protective, grace-filled covenant. It was his way of saying, this is how you flourish in community without destroying each other.
The guardrail analogy perfectly captures the intent of Mount Sinai. And once that covenant framework is established, the relationship is ready to progress to its ultimate goal.
Which is?
Presence. If God is going to dwell among his people, there needs to be a physical epicenter for that relationship.
Okay, the tabernacle.
Yes. God gives Moses incredibly detailed blueprints for the tabernacle, which is a highly symbolic portable sanctuary. He also provides meticulous instructions for the priesthood and the whole system of worship. God is making a monumental declaration here. He's saying, I desire to live in the center of your camp.
It's beautiful. But I struggle with what happens literally next in the text.
Golden calf.
Yeah, the golden calf. While Moses is up on the mountain receiving these beautiful, intimate blueprints for God's dwelling place, the people down below completely implode.
It's tragic.
I mean, I have to push back on the logic of this moment. How do they build an idol mere weeks after seeing an ocean physically split in half?
He's baffling.
God just dismantled the entire Egyptian pantheon. And the moment Moses is out of sight, they melt down their jewelry and start worshiping a farm animal. Are they just entirely faithless, or is there a psychological mechanism at play here?
It seems absurd on the surface, but psychologically, it is actually a profound picture of trauma and human need for control.
Control, really.
Yeah, think about it. Mount Sinai was terrifying. Thunder, lightning, smoke, and the voice of an invisible, holy God.
Right, it was overwhelming.
Exactly. The Israelites were completely overwhelmed when Moses, who is their only tangible link to this invisible God, disappears for over a month. Panic sets in.
Oh, I see.
In their terror, they regress to what they knew for 400 years in Egypt. They wanted a God they could see, a God they could manage, a God that didn't demand a holy covenant, but just accepted their sacrifices.
Oh, wow. A golden calf doesn't give you complex moral guardrails. It just sits there and lets you do what you want.
Exactly. It's the ultimate illusion of control.
Wow. So while God is meticulously planning how to move into their neighborhood, the people are already betraying the covenant.
Yeah, the ink wasn't even dry.
Which brings up the ultimate tension. If the covenant is broken that fast, shouldn't God just abandon the project?
Humanly speaking, the relationship was entirely severed. But this crisis reveals the depth of God's character, and it introduces the critical role of a mediator.
Moses.
Moses steps into the gap. He intercedes, pleading with God not to destroy them, and he anchors his argument on God's own promises and reputation.
And God shows immense mercy.
He does. The core theological lesson established here is that while human sin constantly breaks the relationship, God's grace is powerful enough to restore it.
Moses acts as this ultimate buffer, standing between a holy God and a broken people.
Yes.
And because of that mediation, the project continues, leading us to what our sources identify as the true climax of the book.
Which is not the Red Sea.
No, it's not. It is the final chapter, Exodus 40.
After all the rebellion, after the intense trauma of the golden calf, and after the profound grace of restoration, they finally finish building the sanctuary according to the heavenly blueprints.
Amen.
The glory of the Lord physically fills the tabernacle.
God officially moves in.
The infinite, holy God of the universe takes up residence in a tent in the middle of a dusty, barren wilderness, choosing to dwell right in the center of a camp of flawed, forgetful, traumatized people.
Man, the patience of God is the true miracle of Exodus.
It really is.
The miracle isn't just that God can control water and plagues. The miracle is that a perfectly holy God chooses to stay and dwell with a rebellious people. That he desires our presence that much.
And that desire to redeem a people and dwell with them, it isn't confined to the Sinai wilderness.
Right.
This ancient journey lays the architectural blueprint for a much larger redemption. When we analyze the theological structures of Exodus, they serve as typologies, historical shadows that point forward to an ultimate, perfect fulfillment.
Let's slow down and really trace these lines, because this is where the ancient text maps directly onto the New Testament.
Okay, let's do it.
Our sources highlight incredible Christological foreshadows, showing how these physical events were pointing directly to Jesus Christ.
Take the Passover lamb, for instance. We discussed the psychological weight of substituting a lamb's blood to escape the judgment falling on Egypt. Well, in the New Testament, John the Baptist sees Jesus and declares, "Look, the Lamb of God who takes away the sin of the world." Christ is presented as the ultimate Passover lamb. His sacrifice on the cross provides the permanent substitutionary atonement that saves humanity from the ultimate judgment of sin.
Then there is the manna. While they were wandering in a wilderness completely devoid of resources, God provided this miraculous bread from heaven every single morning to physically sustain them.
Right.
Thousands of years later, Jesus stands before a crowd and explicitly connects himself to that event, calling himself the bread of life, who comes down from heaven to provide eternal spiritual sustenance.
It's a direct parallel. We also see the profound moment where the Israelites are dying of thirst in the desert.
And a rock.
God instructs Moses to strike a rock with his staff, and life-saving water pours out. The Apostle Paul later reflects on this and writes, "That rock was Christ."
That imagery is stunning.
It is. The rock takes the physical blow of judgment, and the result is life-giving water for a dying people. Jesus later offers the living water of the Holy Spirit to quench our deepest spiritual thirst.
And what about the tabernacle itself?
The entire purpose of the tabernacle was to solve the problem of a holy God dwelling with a sinful humanity.
Right.
But it was a temporary physical structure. Fast forward to the prologue of the Gospel of John, and we read that the Word became flesh and made his dwelling among us.
I love this.
The original Greek literally translates to "he tabernacled among us." Jesus is the ultimate fulfillment of God moving into the neighborhood.
It is a breathtakingly seamless narrative. The physical journey of the ancient Israelites is actually a spiritual map for us today.
It really is.
Let's translate that map for our listeners. The geographical progression went from Egypt through the waters of the Red Sea into the wilderness and finally to the presence of God at Sinai.
Applying that today, the psychological and spiritual steps are identical.
Right.
First, you receive redemption. You are brought out of your own personal Egypt, whether that is a literal addiction, a toxic mindset, or the spiritual bondage of your past. You are rescued by a power outside yourself.
Next, you enter the wilderness to learn obedience. You have to unlearn the habits of your slavery. You learn the new rhythms of grace and begin relying on those protective guardrails of God's ways.
Exactly. And third, you learn to abide in God's presence. You build your life around the reality that God desires to dwell with you daily.
And ultimately, you live out your mission. You transform from being a captive making bricks for a worldly empire to being a free person representing God's kingdom.
It's a complete transformation.
It completely reorients our modern view of faith. It shifts the entire focus from merely trying to escape something, like escaping hell or escaping our past, to actually living out God's purpose for something far greater.
It elevates the human experience. To recap the profound message we've uncovered today, Exodus is a journey from the degradation of slavery to the dignity of freedom.
Yes.
But on a much deeper theological level, it is a journey from redemption to covenant and ultimately to presence.
The absolute heartbeat of this book is summarized in God's own words. He brings us out so that he may bring us to himself. Salvation is glorious, and physical rescue is necessary, but it is not the final destination. Deep, abiding life in God's presence is the ultimate goal.
We aren't just pulled from the wreckage and left on the shoreline to fend for ourselves. We are brought all the way into the tabernacle.
As we wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave you with something to really reflect on today. Think back to that action movie rescue we started with.
Yeah.
If your own Red Sea moment, being rescued from your past, your struggles, or whatever bondage was holding you down, is merely the prologue of your story, what tabernacle are you intentionally building in your daily routine to ensure you are actually dwelling in God's presence?
That is the ultimate challenge right there, making intentional space for the rescuer in the messy reality of your everyday life.
Thank you for joining us on this incredible journey through the text today. Keep exploring, keep asking the hard questions, and we'll catch you on the next deep dive.